making yourself available. Just before I get rolling, how much time do you have?
Oh, I have about an hour, I guess, if you need that.
Okay, perfect. That's probably more than enough.
Good.
Just to get everything correct, it's Rosa, R-O-S-A, Koire, K-O-I-R-E.
Right, that's right.
And is there a particular title or affiliation that you prefer in an article? I know you have several.
You can refer to me as the director of the Post Sustainability Institute, or the author of Behind the Green Mask, UN Agenda 21.
Okay, so I'll probably put both of those in here. Thanks, I got Frank and all those details right up. Now, I don't know, maybe this is something that you're not emphasizing as much anymore, but I have sort of a list of questions here. And one of the first things that popped out was that you are also affiliated with, or have a website at least called Democrats Against UN Agenda 21.
Yes, that's right.
And I was curious about that, like explicitly identifying yourself as a Democrat and why you felt that was important, at least on that site.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think if you go to that website, I actually do go into that in some detail. The reason is, of course, because I myself have been a Democrat since I first registered to vote, and always identified myself on the left. I'm pro-choice, anti-war, I'm gay, feminist, and when I began to look into what was behind basically the corporatocracy, and found United Nations Agenda 21 Sustainable Development, I found that many of the people who were talking about it were on the other end of the political spectrum from me. And I felt that it was important to sort of break that glass, box around it, and say, hey, it isn't just people who are conservatives who are concerned about loss of freedom and loss of private property rights in the United States.
Okay, and I didn't run across that on the site, but after we're done talking, I'll go back and see if I can find the point where you discussed that specifically.
Yeah, actually, let me just tell you, it's if you go to our Contact Us page, and then right there above the box where you can, type in your name, etc., it says, people wonder why we don't call this, People Against United Nations Agenda 21. So just click there, and it'll take you to our blog posts regarding that.
Okay. I did read a little bit about you're located in Santa Rosa, and some of you've arrived at certain positions based on experience working as a property appraiser and being involved in some I'm forgetting the word, eminent domain cases, is that correct?
Yeah, I was a district branch chief for the California Department of Transportation, and was employed for about 30 years as a commercial real property appraiser, and my expertise is in eminent domain and litigation support.
Okay. And did you have sort of particular conflicts you were involved in that sort of raised your consciousness about some of these issues?
Yeah, definitely. I was doing, of course, property valuation on complex valuations in Northern California, and I found around the year 2002 that it seemed that there was a planning revolution going on, and that planning departments were blocking people from being able to use their properties as they were zoned, and that it was becoming increasingly difficult to value property for its highest and best use, which is, of course, essential to fairly compensating people when they're having their property taken for eminent domain purposes. So I began to explore what it was about property and land use that was changing, and at the same time I was elected to a citizens oversight board for a huge redevelopment project in my town. It covered an area that about 10,000 people live and work in. It's about 1,300 acres. And I reviewed that and found that it had a fraudulent basis. And during the time that I was reviewing that and researching it, I looked into redevelopment, and as I looked further and more deeply into it, I found that it was a funding and implementation arm of United Nations Agenda 21 Sustainable Development.
And sorry, you were looking more into what exactly?
Well, I was looking into, this was a redevelopment project. So, looking into it, I found that it was actually based on fraudulent data. We did end up suing our city to stop this project. And we lost in Superior Court, and then we took it on appeal where we also lost, but we managed to stall that project until, which would have destroyed our town financially, economically, until, of course, redevelopment was ended in California. So, but the real issue was that I was able to put together the players and what was influencing restrictions on land and energy use and in the North Bay. And then, of course, I did further research and saw that it was all across the world and that it was related to directly Agenda 21 Sustainable Development.
So can you talk a little bit more about those connections that you found?
Yeah, of course, as I looked into it, I found out about I found out about Agenda 21, which was agreed to in 1992 by 179 nations, including the U.S., and they call it the Agenda for the 21st Century. It's the action plan to inventory and control all resources and all human beings on the planet. And so, of course you're going to see that this is a voluntary, non-binding plan. I know you've seen that. And of course that's true, but because it was, brought back to the United States, Clinton created the President's Council on Sustainable Development in 1993, 6 months after he took office. And that ran until 1999, and its entire purpose was to implement Agenda 21 in the United States. And of course they did that using federal agencies, using administrative policies, as well as laws, ordinances, statutes, restrictions that came right down into the states.
So is it I've done some poking around it. Unfortunately, I don't have a copy of your book, but are there excerpts or anything on your site that I would have access to?
You can, if you need my book immediately, you can get it on Kindle. I don't know if that's something you'd want to do.
That's actually a possibility. I'll
Yeah.
look that up.
Yeah, it's on.
I love my e-reader.
Yeah, it's on Nook and on Kindle, so you can just get it easily. I think it's an instant download, of course.
So the other topic that is interesting to me is that right now, you do have a section on your site about smart grid and smart meters, and I wondered if you could talk a little bit how those are related to Agenda 21.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're of course vitally connected because globalization is the standardization of all systems. And so, of course, the smart grid is a way to interconnect everything, internet, anything that's connected to your your electricity. And of course, smart meters are not just for electricity; they're for gas and water as well. And part of the Agenda 21 plan, of course, is predicated on restrictions to our energy usage, reductions in our energy usage. So, this is how you see it. And of course, this is worldwide. As I said, it's standardization of all systems, and you can't have worldwide inventory and control, monitoring and assessment without bringing all of these systems into so-called harmonization with each other. And this is how it's done. It's done, through the technology.
And that gets to another sort of point with your identification as your sort of public identification as a Democrat and left-winger is that, of course, the issue of environmentalism in general is pretty heavily identified with Democrats. So what's your position on quote-unquote environmentalism?
I think the environmental movement has been hijacked by the major corporations. And, when I talk about thinking of myself as an environmentalist, of course, I have and still continue to think of myself as being someone who's concerned about the environment. As I like to say, I don't hardly own anything that's new. I do creative reuse, recycling. My partner built a whole 2-story house out of recycled materials. We're very much interested in reducing our use and making sure that we can be reasonable about what it is that we need. But this goes far beyond that. This is really about having a tremendous impact on our ability to be independent across the world as individuals. I don't know if you're aware that Obama, when he was running for office in 2008, he committed the United States to reducing our greenhouse gas emissions 80% below 1990 levels by the year 2050. And of course, Schwarzenegger, I'm in California, Schwarzenegger and many other governors, he issued in 2005 an executive order saying the same, that California would reduce our greenhouse gas emissions 80% below 1990 levels by the year 2050. I mean, we need to take a look at what that means for us in terms of our economic viability and understand that this plan involves regionalization and destruction of our ability to influence what happens in our government through representative government.
So given that you identify as somebody who cares about some of those issues environmentally, what is if it's not sort of coordinated government action, what is the proper response to trying to, counteract problems in the environment?
I think it's really a great idea to give encouragement to corporations or actually restrict corporations that are dumpers, that are creating major pollution around the world. But when you see the cap and trade system, like for instance, Enron was playing both ends of that against the middle. I know that you probably understand how that cap and trade system worked. Where Enron was one of the world's largest producers of solar energy and wind, and they also had a great deal of coal interests. And so what they were doing was pressuring for restrictions on coal so that they could sell off so they could have huge carbon credits when they reduced their carbon emissions on coal. And then so that was a game, a cap and trade game. And then look at the Chicago Climate Exchange, going from whatever it was, like $7.50 a ton down to 5 cents a ton in 2010. I mean, these are, what you're looking at are major manipulations by those who are in a position to hugely gain by what it seems on the face to be something that might be reasonable in terms of restricting polluters.
So, do you feel like cap and trade specifically is sorry, I have a call. Do you feel like cap and trade specifically is a failed model, or do you think that there's a different kind of regulation that needs to be done? Well, you said, I'm sorry, you actually said we think it's a good idea to restrict corporations, but cap and trade you don't think is a good model.
thing is that when you look at, for instance, the Western Climate Initiative, which was, started out with, I think it was like 5 Western United States and then a bunch of Canadian provinces as well, and just kind of that sort of fell apart. They were purposely incorporated in Delaware so that no one in the United States would be able to get information on how that initiative was designed and governed. And now, of course, we have I think it's the Western Governors Initiative or something like that, that includes California and Oregon and Washington, along with I think British Columbia. It's another thing with cap and trade restrictions, but what it is really a way to charge us as individuals. I mean, you're going to see cap and trade on your water usage just as an individual in your home, where you're going to get your allotment, and if you exceed your allotment, you're going to have to go on the exchange and buy someone else's allotment, their overage. So, I think we need to look more deeply into this instead of just moving forward and assuming that that we're not just hugely enriching a few major corporations or a few cronies or a few politicians, and destroying our ability to be independent and to function and use our land. And I know what you're getting at. I am not a conservative. I am a Democrat. I'm a liberal. I've been, I think I have years of cred on that score. And I don't understand why it is that it seems to be that if you're concerned about land use and private property rights and personal independence, that you're automatically assumed to be a conservative.
Well, I guess it gets to my next sort of question, which is there's an interesting tension because Agenda 21, we really encourage, the language you just read the document is, it encourages local action, and there's an organization I'm sure you're familiar with called ICLEI, I-C-L-E-I, a local, I forget what it stands for, but it's a local initiative support organizations. And so a lot of this is, and my focus for this article is actually initiatives that are happening on the local level for planning and some issues that you run into in Santa Rosa. And maybe you can tell me how much of that do you feel is people at a local level organizing to make decisions on a small scale, and how much of it is influenced by these larger forces that you don't feel should have a hand in what's going on?
Well, I'll tell you that's an easy one to answer because it's zero actual local, truly grassroots local input. And you're not, the thing is that ICLEI is the International Council on Local Environmental Initiatives. They changed their name to Local Governments for Sustainability. But in fact, they are an international organization. They say they represent over 1 billion people worldwide in 80 countries, and most people have never heard of them. There are hundreds of cities. I would say a great portion of the population of the United States is in cities that have become members of ICLEI. And what ICLEI is, essentially, it's a policy and implementation arm for Agenda 21. And what they do is they influence the climate action plans. You'll find that when you're in your town and you're going to a public meeting where you're invited to give your opinion on some new plan for the center of your town, those plans are all the same plan all across the world. It's all the same plan. And it might have different street names, and it might have minor variations, but it's the identical plan. The plan is and if you don't think I don't know that this sounds crazy, of course it does, but I am not crazy. I'm reporting on what is real. So these plans are masquerading. These are global top-down plans masquerading as sort of a grassroots individual initiative. But the plans are actually drawn up and designed by groups that are international, or they're consultant groups that design these plans to to appeal, of course you want clean air, you want clean water, and that's what they always ask you. But then if you want that, then you want high density development in the center of your town. You want restrictions on ability to use your rural and suburban land. And you want maybe high-speed rail, which is designed to fail and sink your economy. Or you want light rail or heavy rail that's local that is very seldom utilized to its full capacity and tends to sink your economy as well. And so you have another thing. I mean, we're talking about the erection of a major global corporatocracy here, with mega corporations that are running this plan and that are funding nonprofits, they're funding foundations, and they're also, influencing politicians, whether they have those politicians going through revolving doors or whatever it is. You have cronies that are getting billions of dollars in tax credits or treasury grants for these plans, and they're truly designed to level our economy here in the United States and in other of the more developed nations.
But you mean sort of make everyone equal, or you mean destroy the economy?
Well, it's I would say that anytime you have a destructive impact on an economy, you're going to actually better the bottom line on mega corporations, because major corporations are looking for a mobile workforce that is, they're looking for unlimited and unrestricted profit. They're looking to have no borders and harmonized laws so that they don't have any restrictions on production. And they also want to develop the lesser developed nations so that they can open new markets. So this is a way to actually move money. Capacity building is part of Agenda 21, of course, along with data collection and data sharing. And this is, of course, a vital part of being able to develop those markets and reducing wages in the more developed countries.
Can you expand on that a little bit? The connection between, I guess, reduced property rights and reducing people's independence.
Sure. Well, if you have reduction on your, well, first of all, if you have what these plans are, these land use plans all across the United States and around the world are all the same. You've got your Hanoi Center Regional 2030 plan. It's pretty much the same plan as the San Francisco Plan Bay Area. And the idea is to move people out of rural and suburban areas into high-density megacities where they can be more easily managed, controlled, and surveilled, by the way. And so what happens is that you have blanket general plans that effectively change your zoning in your centers of your town, so that rather than being zoned for commercial or industrial or residential, you now have zones that are transit-oriented development, transit village, and that means that you have mixed use, high-density development. So that's imposed as a sort of an overlay on cities all across the United States and the world. So that if you are a property owner there, you're not able to use your property as you had been thinking that you could according to your zoning. And also, if you're out in the rural areas, now, for instance, under Plan Bay Area in the San Francisco Bay Area, 100% of development in any zone that's zoned agricultural must be agricultural. You can't build a house out there. Okay, so so if you think that you can be independent on land, the other thing is that in many areas, for instance, in my county, Sonoma County, the county supervisor said, well, there's just no money to pave the county roads. So 1,250 miles of county roads they had proposed to pulverize and turn to gravel. And you're going to have water meter monitoring, water well monitoring, restrictions on your use on your water well. So if you're an agricultural producer, or if you're a small organic farmer, and you want to live independently out on your land, you're going to have a great deal more restriction on your ability to use your land or to get your goods to market. And there are many restrictions on people who are rural dwellers at this point, all the way from restrictions on Medicare and how rural doctors are compensated to whether you have your postal routes out there anymore. So all of this is affecting private property rights, and of course restrictions on whether you can use your land then is going to restrict your ability to remain out there in a rural area.
Well, so there's definitely, well, there's two things, I guess. There is, the sort of counter view would be that there are a lot of forces pushing people into cities, and it's been going on for a century as people move away from rural lifestyles. Is that just sort of happening at the same time as these aggressive efforts to make it happen faster?
I think it's really clear that that the trend is towards the megacity, and the idea is to move people into these large, major urbanized centers. There are 11 of them identified in the United States under the America2050.org plan, and this is being forwarded by the federal government to move people out of areas where where they can be physically independent. And when you have people, of course I've lived in San Francisco. I'm from Los Angeles. It's not about whether you like living in a city or not. People want to have the option of living in a suburb or a rural area. And whether the trend, what I'm telling you is that you can influence those trends by restricting ability to use the rural areas, and by saying to people that they're going to pay vehicle miles traveled taxes. If they're out in the suburbs, they're going to be penalized. And I mean, look at cap and trade. I mean, I was looking at a carbon footprint calculator not that long ago, and it looks like if you're just an average user, your carbon footprint is calculated about $500 a year. In other words, you would be paying $500 a year just to live, moderately in the United States. And so when you look at that, if you're trying to, utilize your natural resources, the land, the water, if you're trying to do that and you're being penalized for it, then there are going to be less and less people who are able to be independent in this country. And I don't know how much traveling you've done in the U.S., but I travel around the U.S. and around the world talking about this. And of course, the United States is a huge nation, and it's agricultural, it's rural. But when you're in a major city, you don't know that. And you can believe that we're using nature up when you're in, on 161st Street. You can believe that there is no nature when you're there.
But you're saying that that's not actually quite the correct perception.
No, that isn't.
So as far as, and this is all, I think that, what's the difference in your view between saying that these are policy initiatives being shaped by a political process at all levels? It's unreasonable to say that, people in a leadership position and people who have been elected think that this is the right thing to do, and therefore there are these initiatives going forward. Is that not a legitimate approach to trying to plan for the future? If people really feel that this is what is going to work we have a rising population, right? We have some issues to deal with. So what's the issue with having these initiatives to try and plan for the future, if that's or maybe that's not what's happening here?
Well, it's interesting that you use that term "plan future" because when you go, if you were to go to some of these meetings, in any town in the United States where you get invited to come on down and give your opinion on that cool new plan for the center of your town, And you come in and they have up on the screen, their PowerPoint. They give you the options. You can pick business as usual, which is the way you live now, or planned future. And the idea is that your future is being planned in high density developments. I'm talking about ground floor retail with multi-stories of residential on top of that in the center of your town, which is subsidized with your tax dollars. And your roads are on a road diet, because you don't want to be driving anymore. So we're going to change that 4-lane road through the center of your town to 2 lanes with a median and wide sidewalks, and so restrict access and mobility through your town. This is regardless of whether you have an adequate transportation system, public transportation system, or not. So these are plans that are designed to restrict your ability to move freely and to use your property and your resources. And as far as our population goes, I believe that the United States is in a negative right now. I think we're not replacing. Well, we're not replacing our population in a 1-to-1. I think it's going down, and that's it's the same for other developed nations. So I think, and as far as whether our elected officials are actually coming to the realization that certain things need to happen or not, they're influenced by staff, and they're also influenced by funds from major mega corporations. And also, they may do, insider stock deals, as we've seen here in California with transportation projects that have been, stock investments have been made by elected officials. And so, I beg your pardon?
I'm sorry, I was just giving you an acknowledgement.
Right. Yeah, so,
if you have any particular cases that you can point me toward, that would be really handy.
As far as what goes?
So I'm in Florida, so I'm not as unfamiliar with California politics as you could.
Well, you've got it there in Florida too. I mean, I think there was a high-speed rail, or not high-speed rail, but a rail project in Florida, and I can look at the details for you, but went hugely over budget, way beyond the number of years that it was supposed to take. Has very low ridership, and these are things that are influenced, of course, by investments in the rail cars themselves, in the rails, in who it is who's going to be benefiting financially from the project. And this is endemic to the situation across the United States.
Actually, I'm not familiar with that particular one, but I do know that our governor turned down a rail project between Tampa and Orlando recently. So there's let me see here. So it sounds like you don't necessarily have let me get to one other thing first. I'm sorry. Thinking out loud. So what do you feel about and it's in the title of your book, but what do you feel is the sort of systematic role of Agenda 21, the document, in a lot of these changes? Because of course, at least formally, there's no relationship, there's no structural governmental relationship between, for example, Agenda 21 has a set of policy recommendations and things like CUE or the President's Council on Sustainable Development. There's no formal relationship, but how do you feel those decisions are being reached so that they are all sort of coming to the same conclusion?
I would actually disagree with you there. ICLEI was created in 1990 to implement Agenda 21. Agenda 21 is a result of a 1987 World Commission on Environment and Development meeting, the Grow-Harlem-Brundtland Commission, that was chaired by Maurice Strong. And that's where sustainable development was identified as development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. And Agenda 21, 5 years later, was supposed to come back with the action plan to the blueprint to implement Agenda 20, to implement sustainable development worldwide. Now, the United States did agree to that plan. George H.W. Bush agreed to it at the Earth Summit. And then, now listen, David, this is really important, okay? Because if you continue to believe what you see, that there is, that there's no relation between the United States policies and Agenda 21, you're going to be perpetrating, sort of, a falsehood around the country as usual. The thing is, there's no question that the President's Council on Sustainable Development was created by President Clinton in 1993, in June of 93. It ran until 1999. It had 10 cabinet level secretaries on it, including Interior, Energy, Commerce, EPA, HUD, and along with them were the major oil producers like Chevron. You had Enron on there. Ken Lay was on the President's Council on Sustainable Development. Along with them, you had the environmental groups like the World Resources Institute and Sierra Club, World Wildlife Fund. And their entire job was to implement Agenda 21 Sustainable Development in the United States, and they did that. And one of the things they did was they funded the American Planning Association with about $5 million to come up with a land use book called Growing Smart, Legislative Guidebook for Planning and the Management of Change. And that book is in every single university, in every college, in every planning department in the country. And Growing Smart is smart growth, and smart growth is the implementation of Agenda 21 in land use.
Yeah. So that's obviously a lineage that's pretty compelling. So you obviously, and I'm really glad that we've gotten to talk, because you've obviously seriously done your homework on all of this stuff and been involved in it very closely, and you've seen up close how it's happening, and you have but I'm wondering, and you addressed this a little bit, but I'm wondering if, or how you feel about, some people on this end of the debate have, a little bit less knowledge of the details of how these things happen, and you do sometimes get a sense that people believe that there's some central force that is kind of dictating all of this stuff. Because what you described is a process where the ideas get spread around and influence is spread around, and people from the top down are coming to an agreement on what they think people should do, and not everybody agrees with that. But I think there are certainly people who think that right now, sitting in the United Nations building somewhere, is five guys who are telling the president what to do. And I'm wondering how you feel about, maybe it's a subtle difference, but there is a difference between those two viewpoints. And I'm wondering if you think it's an important distinction.
I think the United Nations is the framework to make this plan happen, because the plan is about regionalization. This is what we're finding, is that, as I said, globalization is the standardization of all systems. And in order to have globalization, as Zbigniew Brzezinski said, you have to have an interim step, and that is regionalization. And that's where we are right now. We're in governance by unelected boards and commissions, and these are funded and empowered by foundations like the Ford Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation. They influence elected officials with their with corporate funding, with influence on what it is that the future will look like. And the future is being designed as megacities, where it's individual princedoms, it's neo-feudalism. This is what is being empowered right now, and this is how it happens. So, as far as the actual individuals, I don't know who they are, and they're not important. What's important is that corporations, major corporations, are pushing this plan in order to be able to direct the future of governance and to remove the ability of the people to have an influence on what it is that happens to them.
So I have two more questions. One is just, what is your, if this is a kind of vision being promoted by corporations and other powerful people, what would be maybe what your alternative vision is and what the people who you work with envision for a different future that's not this kind of managed centralization?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, I don't pretend to be, some kind of a seer or a person with the answers. I think that we have a perfectly good constitution that's designed for representation of the people. And I think that what has happened is that we have fascism now, and people don't know what it looks like. This is what it looks like. I think that we need to become aware. Most people don't even know this is going on, and then they're, of course, they're given some smear article in some newspaper or magazine that, that sort of characterizes someone like me as being a tinfoil hat crazy person, which I'm certainly not, or someone who's an extremist, which I'm definitely not. So my answer is that people need to educate themselves and take, and remove elected officials. This is a huge process. We've gone very far down this road, but people need to begin to engage more in the political process and also refuse to cooperate, refuse to collaborate with these plans. Because, it's very easy to become part of this plan if you're not aware of it.
Well, I think that actually got to my second question, which is what are your recommendations? But just to respond and to make myself clear, I think that personally, and just on a political level, I think that everything that you're saying makes a lot of sense. I certainly don't personally listening to you right now, view you as a fringe figure. But I do, to be honest, there's a level of complexity and subtlety to your analysis that I do think sometimes gets lost when people talk about these things. And it gets sort of mushed down into some much more simple thinking, but I think that happens all the time. And so like I said, I'm really glad we got to talk, because I do think that what you're describing is this sort of complex view of a process where this one particular viewpoint gets spread through institutions that aren't necessarily democratic. And I do think that that's an important perspective. And, it sounds like what you're talking about is, an honest disagreement between people and forces that have different visions of what the world should look like. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. I don't think that most people would say that that's a bad thing, whichever side of the issue you're on.
The one thing that I would say about this, rather than it being an honest disagreement, I would say that, what we're talking about here is balance, where you have the individual's rights, which of course were guaranteed in our Constitution, being balanced with the rights, so-called, of the community. And there is no community, and there are people who are out there speaking as the community, who have funding, who are supported, who are not even allowing this so-called conversation to happen. This is not a real debate or conversation, and has not been up until this point. What it's been is a marginalization or neutralization of any opposition, which is vital to this plan, because if people really knew what was going on, they would swiftly put a stop to it, I believe.
So, you just said there is no community. I mean, do you really feel that you don't have, you're obviously a participant in your local political process. Do you not feel
Well, I think, it's cool that you just asked me that, because it's a wonderful, wonderful distinction between, what is community? Is community just a group of people who all, a group of individuals who all live together in some town or something, or is it something else? And in this case, community means the group of people who agree with this plan. That's how community is defined, as people who are in accordance and agreement with this plan. Otherwise, you're a contrarian or a dissenter or the opposition who's, some kind of an extremist. And so, people are intimidated. They're drawn to consensus, which is manipulation of populations to give them the impression that their opinion matters. So when you ask me, of course I have friends. Of course I'm connected all across the United States and the world, and I feel that my community is people who are thinking, who are willing to question, who are not going to go along to get along, and who have the courage to step up and stand up and speak out and say, no, this is wrong. Yeah, I guess what I want to ask you, David, is how committed you are to representing a particular point of view that's going to marginalize what I've told you. I'm hoping that you're going to write an article that is genuine and is fair. And if you need more information, I'm happy to give it to you. I am not, someone who is, as I was recently characterized by the Southern Poverty Law Center as an extremist, the thing is that we have something very serious going on in our country and around the world, and it needs to be dealt with in a serious manner. And if the major corporations which own the media are controlling that information, we will not be able to get that information out to people so that they can make these decisions for themselves. So I'm hoping that you have an opportunity here, and I'm really hoping that you're going to use it.
Well, I'll definitely say that you have like I said, a very reasoned and detailed take on this. I think that it's a very compelling argument. I don't know if I necessarily have as far as the core of the issue is concerned, patterns of development, I don't really have much of a stance on that. What I will say, and this is just trying to stop the process itself using tactics that are outside of the way that democracy works. And I think that sometimes is what gets people labeled as extreme.
I understand your point, but I'll tell you, there are times when the only way that you can block this thing is to actually stop it and to, really shut down a meeting, because these meetings are not, this is designed to block and neutralize opposition. These meetings, these public meetings, are truly designed to stop people from having an opportunity for input. They are designed to railroad whole towns. And so if sometimes there are no options, sometimes, and this is, polite discourse is one thing. When you have a full debate and people can listen to both sides and make a decision, but this is heavily weighted on the other side, and, there are often no options.
Yeah, I think I read a little bit about that on your site, about some of the meeting tactics, so that I'll dig into that a little bit as well.
Yeah, that's cool. Can I ask you, so this is a piece for Fortune magazine?
It's for the website, so fortune.com.
Okay. And, all right, great. And have you been recording me?
I do record for my own purposes. I'm sorry, I should have asked. It's actually automatic on my phone.
No, that's cool, because I want to let you know I also record my interviews,
Okay.
so that's fine. I just want you to know that.
Okay, yeah, no problem. And so I do have that, and I have my own notes. I just want to be perfectly frank that I think that you're probably the best person that I have talked to for this, because I always try and I really want to understand where people are coming from. That's my goal as a writer and as a journalist. And so I think that there are a lot of people out there, and admittedly on both sides of the issue, there are people out there who are easy to caricature, and so I like being, and it's hard to fight some of the caricatures that are already in your brain, and so I like being pushed away from that by somebody like yourself, to sort of force me to work a little bit harder and to make a more complete picture that's going to, I hope, really try to represent both sides. So that is my goal, and that's always my goal.
Well, thank you so much, David. I'm really looking forward to reading your article.
And I really appreciate your time.
All right.
I really appreciate your time, and I will do my best to put your position out there.
Thank you so much. I truly appreciate it.
And I think I might grab your book here in a second.
All right, cool. Yeah, and let me know if you want a hard copy. I'll send you one.
Oh, okay. I might take you up on that.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And if I have any follow-ups, would you mind if I come over to email you?
No, that's great. You can email me, because I'll be
Okay.
I'll be traveling in about an hour. I'm leaving for a speaking trip. So if you want to email me, I'll be able to respond.
Okay. Will do.
All right. Thanks a lot, David.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.